we'll do a recap of the play with memes. So first, Oedipus is chosen as the next leader of the town because he defeated the Sphinx and like the riddle and like saved the town, and everything was going good. The townspeople respected him. He was a good leader, but then they were plagued with something. Like they had a plague. People were dying, and they were scared because again, everyone was dying, but they didn't know how to stop it. Like there's nothing they could do. That's when they found out from a messenger of Apollo, I believe, that the plague was brought upon them by Apollo, and that the only way to stop the plague was for them to get rid of the person who killed the former king, because he was murdered. So they were happy that they finally had a solution to the problem. However, they were like, oh yikes, we have no idea who the person could be. So they decided to go ask for an oracle, a seer, I believe, because they're supposed to know everything. So they're like, this guy will tell us who the previous king's killer was. So during that, Oedipus is telling the whole town, this is what we're gonna do when we find that person. That person is gonna get exiled, and there's just no way he's gonna recover from that. And then finally the seer comes, and at first he refuses to tell them who the person was, like who was the one who killed him. But then after a lot of pressure, and be like, just tell us, like, what's the point of you knowing everything if you're not gonna tell us? Like, the people are dying and it's your fault because you're not telling us. And then finally he's like, fine then, you want me to tell you who it is? It's you. You're the one who killed him. You're the one who's bringing about this plague. But like, Oedipus is like, what you on? No, it's not me. There's no way that I could have been the one who killed him. Like, there's no way. So they're just like, they're arguing back and forth, and then Oedipus is like, you know what? I am tired of you. You're surely plotting something with my brother because my brother wants to take the throne from me. Like, there's no way you're plotting with his brother. Yeah, well, brother-in-law, right? Because it's the queen's brother. Anyways, and so then he sends for the guy. It's like, shoo to the seer, like, you don't belong. You're like, I don't want you here anymore. And then he calls Creon, which is Jakarta's brother. I believe that's her name. And he's like, you want to steal my stuff. You want to steal my thunder. You want to steal my throne. So you were teaming up with this seer, and like, you're the one who killed him, and blah, 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 blah. And Creon is like, no, what you on? I wouldn't do that. Like, that's not something I'm interested in anyways. After that is resolved, Jakarta tells her, yo, like, oh yeah, like, there was this oracle that we were given when we first gave birth, and blah 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 blah. And then like, basically, and then she tells him the details of where he died, of like how he died, and he's like, there's no way. And so when he finds out like where he died, he's like, there's a possibility that maybe the guy who knows everything was onto something. Maybe I am that guy. So he's like, okay, but the guy who reported everything, the slave that reported everything, said it was like 5 bandits who killed them all, but it was just me, there's only one. So we'll call for that slave, and if that slave says that there was only one bandit, then it was me. I was the one who killed the previous king. And so they go send for the slave, and while they were waiting for him, a messenger from where Oedipus came from arrives. And he's like, I need to speak to King Oedipus, please. And so then he tells him, yo, your dad's dead. And he's like, my dad's dead, oh my god. And everyone's like, why are you celebrating the fact that your dad died? And like, why won't you come back home? Like, and he's like, no, I don't want to come back home because like my mom's still alive, and like there's still the chance for that prophecy to become fulfilled. And with my dad dead, like that's like half of the prophecy, because like I didn't kill him, but I still don't want to risk it for the biscuit of like getting married to my mom, so I don't want to do that. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh well, when I was younger, there was this prophecy that was given to me that I was going to kill my dad and marry my mom. She's gonna have my children. And he's like, oh, like that's interesting and all, but that could still happen. He's like, what do you mean? And that's when he finds out that he's adopted. And so he's like, what? I'm adopted? Like, those are my parents? But then like, what does that mean? Like, who am I actually? Like, what is my bloodline? Like, what is it? And so he's like, okay, now I need to figure out where I'm from. Okay, so, and then the messenger's like, well, some guy gave you to me, you were like tied up and stuff, and I don't know. And he's like, okay, call that guy. I need you to bring that guy in with me. So they went to go call the farmer who was in charge of, who like gave the messenger Oedipus as a child. And when Jakarta finds this out, her name's Jocasta. When she found out, she's like, please don't dig into this. Like, we're already suffering so much. Don't dig into this. Like, you're gonna regret it. And he's like, no, like, I need to find out who I am. Like, I don't care if I was poor, if I was a slave. I need to find out who I am. And so they bring in the shepherd, and he's like, yeah, like, and so that's when he finds out who gave him away as a child, and like that he in fact did end up fulfilling the prophecy. And then the queen kills herself, and when Oedipus finds out that she kills herself, he goes into her room, takes the pin off of her dress, and stabs his eyeballs with it, blinding himself. And then he's like, yeah, this is like a punishment, you know, like, because like what I did was horrible and terrible. And then he leaves. So that is the recap. The original Oedipus Rex's message was about how you cannot avoid the inevitable, and trying to avoid it will make it worse. The modern version is more about accountability. The modern version, The Gods Are Not to Blame, was written by Ola Rotimi for an African arts contest. The stories are very similar, with only very small changes that reflect the Yoruba culture from where it takes inspiration from. For example, instead of a pin, the dress's pin, Oedipus uses a ceremonial dagger / machete thing that was very important in the culture. And they also speak a lot in proverbs, and there is a lot of use of proverbs. And they also place a lot of importance on herbs and trying to use that to cure the plague. One of the biggest changes, however, is when the townspeople talk to Odewale about the plague, he tells them that they also need to help themselves. That if they're not doing anything to fight the plague, then they are also to blame, and cannot put the blame entirely on others. They cannot rely solely on others to fix their problems. They also need to take accountability and work for something better. And the play was made after the Nigerian Civil War, and this small change was meant to make the audience think about who they placed the blame on for rising animosity between Nigerians. Because back then it was like the blame was very much placed on the colonizers and the problems that they brought with them and the problems that stayed after they left. And so he wanted to make them think, like, while that is part of the problem, it is not the entire problem. The entire problem is also that you guys are not taking accountability and realizing that you guys are also part of the problem, and so it is making everything worse because the colonizers are gone. Their impact still lingers. However, we can make the change, and if we work actually to make it better, then it will get better. But no one is doing anything to make it better right now, and that is why the animosity keeps rising. So what I've learned about like ancient myths and how they live on after times is that the messages are still relevant, and the bigger messages can also be modified to stay relevant in the current problems. And that is why people use a lot of interact a lot with the literature back then. It has also changed my perspective on how we choose to interact with works of literature or art that came before us. After something is created and presented to the world, it is no longer only yours. The emotions the piece evokes are not only yours, but also the viewers. The perspective and interpretation may differ, but it's their own. So that piece of art also becomes the spectators. When something is published, the art no longer just belongs to oneself, because the emotions that it provokes are also, to the readers and the spectators, are also very real, and how they choose to interpret it. That version of the interpretation, that version of the art is it's not theirs anymore.